Which is why I want you, Captain America, to help me rebuild the Avengers.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Captain America Brave New World is out in theaters this week. I had a chance to see it. This will be my review. I know there's a ton of questions about Anthony Mackie's Captain America and whether or not he just works in general in the larger MCU and the Avengers movies compared to Chris Evans' Captain America. He was one of the foundational pillars of the Avengers and the MCU movies just in general. Like if Captain America and Iron Man had not worked, the MCU would not be a thing. Like the movies just in general would not have worked. Kevin Feige called them, Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr.'s Captain America and Iron Man, the heart and soul of the Avengers, and this movie, Captain America Brave New World, had a lot it needed to accomplish in trying to sell Sam Wilson's Captain America as a worthy successor to Steve Rogers, and worthy enough to make as many puns as possible to lead a new Avengers team eventually, heading into Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, because Marvel will not stop talking about how he's supposed to be at the center of these next Avengers movies. With everything they threw into this movie, there is a lot to talk about. I will do a separate video for the post-credit scene and a full breakdown of the entire movie with all the Easter eggs and references later this week after it does come out everywhere in theaters around the world, so be sure to subscribe to get everything and do try to see the movie as soon as possible, because I think a lot of people are going to walk out of this movie being more excited about the stuff it sets up as opposed to the actual movie itself. But we will start by addressing the biggest thing about the movie. Let's talk about the Hulk in the room here. I felt like this movie was more of a sequel to Incredible Hulk than it was a self-contained Captain America solo movie. Like they married a Hulk movie with a Captain America movie. You could really tell that Marvel and Kevin Feige wanted to make a Hulk solo movie, but a couple of years ago when they started developing this movie, they still had the legal problems with Universal. Apparently, they weren't able to do a Hulk solo movie at the time. So they did their Hulk sequel movie, but they just called it a Captain America movie. Most of the major plot lines, big twists on characters are things that they either introduced in the Edward Norton Incredible Hulk movie or things they teased during that, like Red Hulk, Thunderbolt Ross, the leader character as the main villain of the movie. Liv Tyler's Betty Ross from that movie is also back in this film. So if you like the Incredible Hulk movie, you like those characters, this does deliver on some of the payoffs that original Incredible Hulk movie set up. Marvel definitely leaned into Red Hulk to sell this movie to audiences in the marketing, but it's not totally wrong of them to sell the movie as Incredible Hulk too. They just can't call it that legally. Please, Universal, don't sue us. There has been a lot of negative press about the actual making of the movie itself, like the supposed reshoots, the budget being out of control. Marvel on their side of things stated that a lot of those rumors were incorrect, being misreported. The actual budget was closer to other regular non-Avengers level movies, like under $200 million, whether or not you choose to believe that, just because the way they report on movie budgets is all over the map. The way that Hollywood accounting works, they can generally make the numbers look like whatever they want them to look like. But after actually seeing the movie, I will say that the reshoots, the extra work that they did to polish the movie 4 times apparently, probably did help a lot. Like it sounded like the movie had a lot of problems early on, but overall, like the final version of the movie in theaters just wound up being okay. Like the nicest thing I can say about it is that it was enjoyable, but it was aggressively fine. Like not great, but not bad either. But here's where we compare it to other Captain America movies, other Marvel movies in general. The movie really wanted to be another Captain America Winter Soldier. They kept selling it as Winter Soldier vibes, like a paranoid thriller in the tone of Winter Soldier. But the movie never quite got to that level. Like it just never actually gets to Winter Soldier levels of quality. I think a lot of that had to do with the story and the characters that Marvel had going into this. Like this whole phase of Marvel is just characterized by them just using the shotgun method of shooting a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Probably the strongest thing this movie has going for it is the action. The action is great. Like it's an okay, like a decent film, but a great action movie. I believe a lot of the reshoots they did were actually focused mostly around the action scenes. Generally, the movie is way more grounded, though, than something like Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, Marvel is trying to get back to doing more ground-level movies because we're in the middle of this multiverse phase. There's a lot of fatigue with that. People are wanting to move on to other types of stories. So if you're one of those people that have been complaining about all the multiverse stuff that's been going on the last several years, this movie is one of the answers to that, at least in terms of tone and vibe. It does invoke Tiamat, the dead celestial from the End of the Eternals movie. They do introduce adamantium in the MCU for the first time, and there's a lot of long-running teases from the Incredible Hulk movie that they pay off with the leader's Hulk serum, like just generally Hulk-related storylines. Some teasers for larger new Avengers stuff in the background coming up into Avengers Doomsday, so there are some larger things going on in the background that tie to the multiverse saga, but the movie still managed to stay what I would call a more ground-level thriller. Ranking it amongst the other Captain America movies so far, like I said, Winter Soldier is still my favorite Captain America movie, but I would rank this movie somewhere around or just below the first Captain America movie and definitely below Captain America Civil War. You can decide which movie you like better, the original First Avenger movie or Civil War. Personally, the first Captain America movie does have a soft spot in my heart for them doing the period piece set in the 1940s. They're kind of using that vibe for the new Fantastic Four movie, so if you like that retro feel in the Marvel movies, we will get that again later this year. But again, this movie just never quite gets to the level of the Steve Rogers Captain America movies, even though I do think there's a disparity in quality amongst the Steve Rogers Captain America films. Like, not all the films are created equal. No coincidence, though, that my favorite Captain America movie was directed by the Russos, and the writers of that movie also wrote both Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, all the other previous Captain America movies, and that whole team is coming back now to direct and write Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars back-to-back. So this will also get into the Anthony Mackie Captain America of it all too, because he's meant to be a really important character going forward in Marvel, so this movie had a lot of work to do, like a lot of legwork to get him to that level. When it came to him in the movie, he's a great actor, like he did a great job with the material they gave him in this film, but he just does not have the aura of Steve Rogers' Captain America. Like, he does not have aura in the way I think he needs to have it if he wants to lead a new Avengers team. This movie did nothing to change my mind about him not really being believable as the dude who's the right person to lead that new Avengers team. If you're looking at a legit new Avengers team, like who's the most badass people we could put on this new Avengers in the MCU during Doomsday, he'd be like the third guy to the right or the left in the lineup at best. Maybe with the Russos taking over the character heading into Avengers Doomsday, they can get his character to the level Marvel wants him to be at, because the Russos were hyping up Anthony Mackie a lot. But right now, I just do not see it happening. Like, we will see what they turn out with Avengers Doomsday. Generally, I am a fan of his, love his performances in the Marvel movies as his Falcon and now his new Captain America character, but as of right now, like I said, he's just not the guy for the new Avengers. Next big guy in the room we have to address, obviously, Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross in Red Hulk. If you didn't realize, Marvel recast Thunderbolt Ross after William Hurt passed away recently. May he rest in peace. Black Widow was his last movie. Harrison Ford is meant to be the exact same character, same person. My guess is that he either didn't want to grow a mustache for the role, or Marvel did try to costume test the mustache and just thought that he looked too silly with it, so they just found a way to write it out of the movie with a couple lines of dialogue. So they do address the fact that he has no mustache anymore in the actual movie. But it is meant to pick up with him already being president of the United States. And outside of a reference, largely the movie pretends like Secret Invasion never existed. Like, you can see this movie without ever having watched those episodes, and I'm pretty sure now that Marvel is hoping that you never watch those episodes. Marvel gonna roll Scarlet Witch out to just completely wipe Secret Invasion from reality. It's not really a huge complaint because all big movies do this, but I do find it funny how much hand-waving Marvel does with big plot points like this. Probably deleted scenes or longer versions of scenes where characters talk about exposition and backstory, like, how did you become president? Like, what happened the last couple of months? What's been going on? We're way too busy to dwell on the past. We need to talk about this giant celestial and all the adamantium that just popped up, and this giant Hulk that just showed up. Never mind what happened to the Eternals after that movie. Harrison Ford, to his credit, did a solid job with the big special effects movies like this. I feel like he fit a little bit better with the special effects in this movie than like the action that they tried to have him do during the last Indiana Jones movie. I think that Marvel just did a better job of utilizing him with what he's capable of doing as an old man, but he also did a lot of his own motion capture work for Red Hulk, so he wasn't phoning a lot of that in the way that people thought that he might. Apparently, he's even making Star Wars jokes on his own now in interviews, so whatever Marvel is putting in his drinks is working. He's super jazzed up about being in the Marvel Universe going forward as Red Hulk. My only real complaints when it came to Red Hulk are that he's barely in the movie. Like, the way they marketed him, you'd think that he was in the entire movie itself. but really it only winds up being a handful of minutes. Like, it felt like Marvel wasn't super confident maybe in Anthony Mackie Captain America selling all the tickets they wanted to sell, so they just leaned into Red Hulk to close that gap. Like, people will come out for Red Hulk, we're really excited about that. But really, at the end of the day, he's barely in the movie. Generally, the visual effects for the way they do Hulk in this movie feel like they're getting better with the movies at least, but that's because they took the extra time to polish it. If you ignore what happened in She-Hulk because the visual effects in that were kind of slop, that was mostly an effect of them trying to rush all the episodes out. But I think one of the other good things about the movie is that it felt way more real than, say, something like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where one of the big complaints is that it felt like a lot of visual effects slop where nothing was real. Marvel seems like it started to get that message, like, okay, maybe we should pivot away back towards more real-world stuff, more real-world sets. I'm kind of hoping they keep up that trend, too, when we start getting the new X-Men movies eventually after Secret Wars, where they go back to more physical sets, more physical environments, where just everything feels more real. Next big thing we have to talk about is Timberlake Nelson as the actual main villain of the movie. He returns as the leader from the Incredible Hulk film. He was contracted for a trilogy of Hulk movies back in the day too. He said he was originally going to be the main villain of Incredible Hulk 2, so no coincidence that this movie now is kind of like the Incredible Hulk 2. He's a great actor, love all the stuff that he does. My complaint, though, when it comes to leader in the movie was the way they visually portray him from the comics. If you're not familiar with a lot of the Hulk comics, he's a genius who was given gamma powers that massively mutate his body, giving him a huge brain, making him one of the smartest people on the planet. And even though he works mostly with other villains, he himself doesn't overtly seek to be a big villain on Earth. It's just that he has this massive mind with crazy ideas, pushing things to like the bleeding edge without really considering the morality of the ideas that he comes up with. Kind of like the Maker to make a Fantastic Four reference, because we have the Fantastic Four movie coming up pretty soon too. Another good comparison to make is that Timberlake Nelson described Leader in this movie as being a little bit like Prometheus, in that he's trying to help people using his massive brain, but winds up taking things way too far and the world suffers for it, or will eventually suffer. There are a lot of teasers for future Hulk-related storylines in the movie, in addition to also setting up Avengers Doomsday, so hopefully Marvel will pay some of those off, and we won't have to wait like 15 years for that. I was really glad to see Isaiah Bradley come back and they let him be a badass using his Captain America powers. If it wasn't clear, he still does have super soldier powers in the events of this movie. They tested the next iteration of the serum on him. He was mostly active through the Korean War in the 50s, before the government put him in prison, and then we saw him come back during Falcon and Winter Soldier. He winds up being a big part of the inciting event that sets off the plot of this movie. And a lot of people are excited to see Giancarlo Esposito show up in the MCU. He's playing Sidewinder from the Serpent Society. He's meant to be the leader of the Serpent Society. And one of the things about this movie is they try to make it this very ground level, paranoid throat, like very real world feeling, Winter Soldier vibes, like I've said. So one of the biggest problems they said they had in the movie was trying to make the Serpent Society come off without being too over the top and too silly. Generally, it felt like they did a pretty decent job, but he's not a huge part of the movie, but he will come back in future films. So like, if you're excited to see him be a badass in the MCU, we'll see more of that in the future at some point. His character was a big part of the reshoots. They basically got rid of a bunch of characters and then just swapped him in because they felt like he was a much bigger sell, a much bigger get for the movie. The music, the score was solid.
Kendrick did the title song for my movie. That's not supposed to be a surprise.
Technically, there were a lot of things I liked about the movie, but as I said, not a great movie, just good to okay, aggressively fine movie. I don't think that it was bad though, or like a waste of Marvel's money. Just feels like they had a lot of interesting ideas for a Hulk sequel, but they couldn't actually do a Hulk sequel. Once you do have a chance to see the movie, post your reactions in the comments below. My post-credit scene video should post on Friday, and my longer breakdown of the entire movie with all the Easter eggs and references should post Saturday morning. So be sure to go see the movie as soon as possible so we can talk about all the stuff this movie is setting up. If you're just talking about this year, I think people will be a little bit more excited about what's happening with Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four though. Everybody click here for my new Thunderbolts trailer with the Sentry and the Void, and click here for my brand new Fantastic Four trailer videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.